Good morning and welcome to Onward in Love and Caregiving. And this is the third Friday in November, and we are celebrating National Family Caregiver Month. That's something we love to do. Those of us who have been involved in the world of family caregiving on a national level spent a great deal of time trying to make this happen many, many years ago. And so each November, it's extremely special. And I like to spend some time, first of all, to say thank you. November is also the month of gratitude, and saying thank you is such an important part, not only of Thanksgiving, but of giving thanks for family caregivers. Yes, each and every one of you. I always ask during November, and I try to do it myself, that every day, at least once a day, I thank a family caregiver and I use that name. As I've suggested before, it's very important to name what we're doing. For too long, we were the silent patients. Now we have become honored, and whether you use the term family caregiver or carer, because carer is used throughout the world far more than is the term family caregiver. But whichever term you use, it is a term that talks of a person living the golden rule. And I like to name it for several reasons. One, it adds dignity to what is being done in a very generous way. But secondly, by naming it, and sometimes people will look very surprised as if, yes, I guess that's who I am. They aren't aware of what they are doing and aware of all that is available to them. And therefore, once we give it a name, in this day and age of computer and technology, there is so much available. We just Google it. I love that, Googling. And it's true because we can put in carer, family caregiving, and begin to find additional resources and find them at times that are convenient to us. That's always the gift of programs like this one. I have many of you who write to me and thank me that we put them up on the Facebook, but then they are put onto our website, onto the YouTube channel. And in so doing, each of you can look at a time that's convenient to you. So as we say thank you, and I hope that you will pass it on, if you're a family caregiver, allow me to say thank you to you. If you are someone who is finding information for a caregiver, thank you for doing that as well. Among the ways of dealing with gratitude, and we've had lots of talks on that topic. As you know, it is something that to me is life-saving. It certainly was in my world of 12-step work. And that's a long, long time I have been blessed to be involved in that. But it was gratitude that I needed to cling on to. And one of the great lessons I learned there, and I have passed it on with family caregiving, I've shared it with my counseling work at the church. I share it very liberally because it's something that means a great deal to me. And that is my gratitude list. And gratitude lists don't have to be major accomplishments. They can be those small steps. Today, and it certainly was true while my hip was learning to come alive again, I was grateful that I could lift my leg twice, and I put it down on my gratitude list because 2 times was more than 1 time, and certainly far more than no time. And slowly we begin to appreciate that. Yes, I look back and I smile. I look back and smile at some of the very first things I put on my gratitude list in that rehab 30 some years ago. At that moment, that item was extremely important. And with every one of these talks that I have done I think we began in 2018. We've been doing this quite a while. But whatever year it was, I each day, and I will do it tonight before I go to bed. I keep pointing that way because my Bible is there and my gratitude list is in it. And I'm going to write down this day, this date. I shall think of each of you on my gratitude list as I list having this opportunity to talk with you. So I encourage you, not only because it helps you be present today, but it also is a gift as we go back and read through it. Often I have had people who are dealing with grief go back to that gratitude list because the ultimate journey is going to be surrender and gratitude. And through that pathway, we come to love. Now, it wouldn't be National Family Caregiver Month if I didn't spend just a little time with all of you. And this is a very important thing to remember. In these programs, I have people who are coming to us from perhaps the first time, and to you I say a special welcome. Others of you have been following regularly. But I am always conscious of those who are new to the world of family caregiving. And I want to help them to, as quickly as possible, get on to the main items. Number one, naming it. Number two, all the faces and naming the many faces of family caregiving. And that's what we're going to be doing today. Because once we've done both of those, we're very capable then of taking the third step, which is very simply, what is the one rule of family caregiving? We all know it and we can say it together. Before I can care for you, I've got to care for myself. It's the old airplane story, and it's learning to give from abundance. Having cared for myself, I can then care for you. Because otherwise, we're going to end up with two care recipients laying on the floor, exhausted. And we don't want to create more caregivers. That has been my goal throughout all of my work with Emblem Health, with the church, with the programs that I do all over the world. It is keeping caregivers, not creating more care recipients. And I think we'd all agree upon that one. Now, I want to just take a moment. There's no question, when I first was invited 25 plus years ago to create the Care for the Family Caregiver program for Emblem Health here in New York City, I immediately thought of my grandparents, all of whom had died. I have been one of those persons blessed to have known all of my grandparents, my father's parents and my mother's parents. They're now all at peace. But I was blessed to know them, but I knew their stories. And so when we were talking about this project of bringing attention to the silent patients, the family caregivers, I was in the back of my mind, it was thinking of Grandma and Grandpa and the other Grandma and Grandpa. Now that is the most common story of family caregiving. I have now become Grandma and Grandpa's age, so I have arrived at that point. And I still do lots of caregiving. So that tells us there are many forms. And the reason we need to understand this is it's not just about caring for your seniors, because many people may be caring for a senior and caring for a child with a chronic condition, or they may be caring for a senior raising a child but dealing with their partner. Often that's called the sandwich generation. And today, with families being as large as they are, it's just incredible. There are 6 and 7 generations. You see pictures of them on Facebook all the time. It's just an absolutely amazing thing. So there are many ways in which there can be many different iterations of family caregiving going on at one time. And we need to be aware of that. as professionals, as medical professionals, so that we understand the many ramifications of caregiving going on in a person's life. Now, there's certainly seniors caring for seniors. That's very, very common. A senior talking to another senior, walking with that senior. It's certainly the story of my life with many of my wonderful, wonderful people in Prayer Circle. During the many years that I was privileged to do that at the Marble Collegiate Church here in New York, I always said, we're walking each other home. And as a pastor, I have been blessed to preside at the memorial and funeral services for many of them. That is the journey that we were on. Then we also have seniors raising grandchildren. That's huge here in New York City. And that's known professionally as kinship, meaning intergenerational. It doesn't necessarily mean always a grandparent. It could be an aunt or an uncle who are raising children. And often the reason is very simply incarceration, drug and alcohol, all of those sorts of things that are preventing one generation from dealing with another one. So we have intergenerational, and that's kinship, and there is tons of wonderful resources there. Then let's not forget children caregivers. I can't begin to tell you how many stories I hear about children, and they bring a lot to the table, and getting them involved early on in family caregiving is a very powerful and important thing to do, because we want them to know that this is part of life. We are caring for our elders, we're caring for parents, we're caring for spouses. Please help us along. Well, what can they do? They certainly are good at running errands. They're certainly marvelous at the computer. Let them Google away. Find out information. They'll do it much faster than I will. That is for certain. Or cleaning, doing various things to help the caregiver or the professional caregivers. It teaches them a great deal about healthcare as an entity itself. Who knows? They may see someone doing something within the healthcare profession that is not just a doctor and a nurse, but any of the thousands of other opportunities of employment. And they say, I'd like to do that. That is a gift of caregiving. Now, we certainly understand long-distance caregiving, and that in and of itself makes certain requirements. My parents lived, they're both dead now, they lived in Wisconsin, where my sister lives. And so early on, as we were becoming the caregivers to both of them, I had a note by my telephones. I still had landlines at that time. And I had a note by each of the landlines that said, my sister's name is Kathy. Kathy is the primary caregiver. That reminded me I was part of a team. And while I may travel the world talking about this topic, Kathy was hands-on. She was present. She knew what was happening minute by minute, and she needed to be respected totally, because she knew what she needed, when she needed it, and why, and I would never, and I never did, second guess her. More and more, and this appears in our international scene, I spoke a number of years ago, President Obama had spoken to the diaspora of Indonesia, at a huge event in Jakarta, and I had the privilege of being part of that program, talking about long-distance caregiving. There were over 10,000 people who joined us in Jakarta to hear the president, and it was a day I shall never forget. And then we had various breakout sessions and groups, and I began talking about being a caregiver when you are 24 hours away. I was using America as the point of reference, but there are various degrees. In other words, you can't go home for the weekend. It takes the whole weekend to get there. So it's not like living just a few hours away or around the block. So it becomes imperative that different methodologies are taken and that the primary caregiver is once again named. You hear me come back to that. We need among the family of origin, the family of choice, all those who are coming forward to help. We need one named as the primary caregiver with the support of everyone else. Chronic conditions know no age. So children, middle of life, and end of life. Chronic conditions, they are conditions that are always there and very often call for a caregiver in different capacities as things improve, as things get worse, as things improve, as things become more difficult. Another face of family caregiving. AIDS was probably the most noted end of life issues in the middle of life. A tragic period, one I shall never forget, and I pray I never see again. But it was the reality, and we all stood up to it. And many wonderful things came out of that research. We certainly learned the terminology of family of choice. That became very obvious. That's where it came from. So that becomes another form of family caregiving, another face. The LGBT world also is another face because, unlike the rest of the population, we tend to lead a very horizontal life. In other words, our friends tend to be within a 20-year range or whatever. It's not the vertical. And therefore, again, as people age, they have less and less people around them. So it becomes imperative to expand that. And organizations like SAGE are doing that. Other organizations, the Gay Health, the LGBT Center here, and in many other parts of America, are expanding that. So it's a very important work, but it's one to understand that it is a specialized caregiving. And respect for those who still think they're in the closet, even if everyone knows they're gay. We have to honor a person for who and what and where they think they are in life. Because how else are you going to help them? You've got to meet them where they are. And why not? It's where you want to be met. Military veterans. Now, this combines several of the things I've spoken about. One, certainly kinship, because many of the wounds of today's wars, sadly, are things that are terminal, that are going to be constant. They will be until the terminal of that life is reached. They are not going to heal. And therefore, the spouse is often committed to a huge lifetime of service and love. And therefore, grandparents often become involved in the kinship program. Also, all of the things that we've talked about on chronic conditions, because that's what they are. The comorbidities are chronic conditions by and large. And there are different ways of helping. There are ways that we can stand up and be counted. But we need to honor that that is a unique face of family caregiving. So I'm sharing with you this so that you broaden, and in your scope and in your circle of understanding, you widen the circle and welcome and thank all of the persons. Now, many years ago, I live here in Manhattan. I'm on the 14th floor of a 22-story apartment building in Chelsea. I started a caregiving committee here in the building. Not a nosy neighbor committee. That was not what it was about, though some people at the beginning thought that's what I was doing. I said, no, we have a lot of people who are single, widowed, never partnered, all sorts of different relationships. And we also had a number of people who were on certain medical equipment that requires electricity. Well, blessedly, we were able to get, at one point, 87% of the people in this building to sign on to the Know Your Neighbor Committee. That's what we ended up calling it. But the concept behind it was to know who was in that apartment, Did they have specific medical needs? Were any of them related to electricity? Because when a certain storm was coming, fortunately, we got everybody out of here before the lights and the electricity went out. But we only could do that because we knew who was here, and we had floor captains who could quickly go and see and help. Now, I will tell you one funny thing. These glasses are very loose today. One thing that in creating this, yes, everyone thought I was doing a nosy neighbor committee, and I wasn't at all. That's the least thing. The doorman can tell you those answers. But welcome to New York. But the truth is, I wanted to be certain we got as many people. And when we first put this out, we had only about 20% of the people who bought into it. And I knew that there was something I was missing. I didn't think it was other people's fault. I always prefer to look at what I can do. And so I began praying about it. That's what I do. And 1 week later, I'm waiting for the elevator, and the elevator doors open, and out comes one of the dog walkers with 6 dogs. I said, "Thank you. I know what to do." I added pets. We had 87% of the building sign up. And yes, it was important because when 9/11 happened, I'm on 23rd Street. In order to go past 14th Street, we had to show our passport. In a world like we live in, we need to take actions to be safe, to be secure, and to be helping one another. That's caregiving. Men as caregivers, that is a field that is becoming newer and newer and being talked about more. That was something that was not talked about, and we have a great deal of thanks to give to my very dear, dear friend, Sam Simon, and his brilliant play, The Actual Dance, which was his story about his wife's breast cancer, his caregiving journey. And it's one of the most powerful plays. And if you've not seen it, if you've not read the book, because there is a book paralleling it, I urge you. The Actual Dance, Sam Simon, makes a wonderful Christmas gift as well. Now, a number of years ago, I was asked for the UN NGO Committee on Aging, of which I've been a member for a long time, to speak about caregiving in the homeless population. Well, I want to tell you, I learned more in the month or two that I researched. And I researched by getting to know all the homeless people who live within about a 3-block area of this home. Homelessness is huge. But the infrastructure that they have created, now I'm not suggesting it's what anybody would want, but they have taken an issue and they care. It was extremely powerful how each one knew each other's name, who knew what was happening in their lives, where they could be found, whether they went to a shelter, they didn't go to a shelter, whether they had medical needs. It was a powerful experience. And it was something to be honored. And I have since spent some time with the various shelters in New York, urging the building of that sort of community. And then probably the most amazing project I ever had the privilege of being involved with was from, I always have trouble remembering the name of the university. It's right out the window over here. Well, Fordham University. Nothing wrong with me. Fordham University. And one of their brilliant social workers, Dr. Tina Muskie, did a program on incarcerated persons and caregiving. And to begin the program, she showed a clip from a documentary. And if you ever want to see a powerful documentary, it is this. It's entitled The Angola Project. In this documentary, it is a visit to this facility, and it's mostly shot from outside because going in is not something that can be done. These are the most criminal of criminals. I don't know how else to say it. Murderers, totally convicted for life sentences. But what they never thought about was, how do you deal with the aging? Well, as the program began to unfold, we began to hear from various inmates There's only one word for what I was hearing: the redemptive power of family caregiving. One inmate sang, "I had dreamed all my life of being in the medical field. I wanted to be a doctor. My mother wanted me to be a doctor, but life certainly went a different way. Here, at the end of my life, caring for my friend, I have been able to fulfill that goal. I've been able to be present for him." Wow. I urge you to consider that. Now, those are but a few of the major phases of family caregiving. I hope I've helped you to see what a big world it is. Yes, it's seniors like me, like my grandparents from when I began this work. So much more. Frankly, as Rosalind Carter says, there are only four types of people in the world anyhow. There are those of us who are caregivers today. I'm one, and I know many of you are. There are those of us who have been caregivers. There are those of us who will be caregivers. And there are those of us who will be cared for. We get to play most of those roles in this life. And we really need to understand each. Now, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being with me, and I'm going to put my glasses on so I'm able to turn the computer off. I want to thank you for being with me. I want to wish you a wonderful week as you prepare for the holiday. And next week, I'm going to be talking a bit more about the holidays and family caregiving. Until then, as we always say, onward in love and caregiving. Namaste. God bless. Happy Thanksgiving, and I'll see you real soon.